This week we begin Sefer Vayikra, Parshas Vayikra. Last week we completed Sefer Shmos. Now Sefer Shmos, at least the last couple of parshas, focused on the building of the Mishkan, the building of the tabernacle in the desert. The Mishkan was to serve as a place that the Jewish people were able to connect with Hashem. God's presence was found in the Mishkan on top of the Aron, and from there, on top of the ark, and from there permeated the Kedusha, the sanctity, within the whole Mishkan. So when the Bnei Yisrael wanted, when the Jewish people wanted to become close with God, what they would do is they would go into the Mishkan and they would offer something. They would connect with God. They would offer korbanos. They would offer sacrifices. Now, some of these sacrifices were sacrifices that were brought on behalf of the entire community. And other sacrifices were sacrifices that were brought by the individual for specific purposes. So it may have been an individual who sinned, or it may have been an individual who was celebrating or was very happy or very grateful to God for something, and they offered a sacrifice. And these sacrifices, for example, were brought on a daily basis in the Mishkan. The way in which these sacrifices were brought was not by the individual on the Mizbeach, the altar of the Mishkan itself, but it was brought by a conduit, by the Kohanim. So the Kohanim were instructed how to bring each korban, each sacrifice, and for what purpose. Now, Sefer Vayikra is called Torah's Kohanim because it is the law, it is the Torah of the Kohanim. It's sort of their handbook to understand how to perform the service in the Mishkan. Now, when a person wanted to bring a korban, they would look at, let's say, for example, if they were wealthy enough, they looked at a certain animal that they had, the best animal that they had, and they said, I want to bring this animal as a korban. Or if they weren't that wealthy, if they didn't have the means, they would bring something that was important to them. Something was valuable to them. It could have been a bird. It could have been something else. But when this was brought to the Kohen would take it, and the Kohen would prepare it as a korban. Ultimately, the Kohen would be makdir it. He would place it on the fire, and what it would create, we see time and time again written in Psukim, is it would create an ishei reach nichoach lashem. It would create a fire, which was a reach nichoach, a pleasant smell, kavyachol, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, how are we to understand what this really means? What's it really about? What was Hashem interested in? So Rav Chaim Chaika Me'amdor explains that in essence, what we really have here is that Hashem had a tremendous pleasure when he saw that a person not only was giving a korban, but when he saw the eish, the fire, by which the person brought the korban. So it wasn't per se only the fire itself of the korban, of the sacrifice, but it was the fire that was embedded within the individual through the process, from deciding in the first place to bring a korban, to actually taking the korban to Yerushalayim, to giving it to the Kohen and being involved in the process. The fire, the zeal, the desire, the devotion that was inside this individual, the desire to become closer to God, that process, that fire, is what made Hashem and gave Hashem so much pleasure and connected this individual closer to God. So he explains that in our times, of course, we don't have korbanos. But what we do have is mitzvos. And while we don't have korbanos to bring us closer to God, we have mitzvos. We have our commandments. We have the good things that we do, the mitzvos that we do that bring us closer to Hashem. So what brings Hashem pleasure? Not that we simply do the mitzvos and have them done, but the fire, the desire, the emotion, the passion by which we perform those mitzvos. So when it comes to davening shacharis in the morning, do I say, okay, fine, I daven shacharis? Or is it about the fire, the passion that I have inside during the process while I'm davening shacharis? Or when I light candles on a Friday night, is it simply about having the two candles lit, quickly making a bracha and just having them lit? Or is it the process of the mitzvah that I take love in, that I enjoy, of preparing the candles, and saying the bracha, and davening afterwards, and taking my time, the fire within me that brings about the enjoyment of the mitzvah that makes Hashem happy and makes him smile? Or is it about when I decide to visit a chola, to visit a sick person, that I say to myself, okay, it's on the checklist, visit so-and-so today? Am I simply looking at it as, okay, I visited them, now they're happy? Or am I looking at it from the perspective of doing the process itself, the fire that is within me, that helps me through the process and gives me that sense of understanding that the reason why I'm doing this is to help someone else, is to become closer to Hashem. And that, in essence, is what Hashem is looking for. The passion that we have behind our mitzvos. May we be zoche during this month of Adar, the happiest month on the Jewish calendar, that we create a sense of internal simcha, internal happiness, internal joy, by virtue of our ability to take joy and passion within the observance of our mitzvos themselves, and by such become closer with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos.